payments and settlements. So this concept, which is important to be understood, how we can make payments and make settlements for the invoices. Okay. So suppose if there is a pending vendor invoice for or open vendor invoice for a vendor. So how we are going to settle it is one question. So you can settle it by making a payment journal. So through payment journal also you can select one of the invoice that you want to settle and you can settle it. Or there is another process also. So we'll see both of them today. So I'm creating a payment journal as you can see here. Going to vendor payment journal and select the lines. We'll select a vendor account. One vendor, suppose I'll select Tata company. Okay. For Tata company, I'm not selecting any payment. I can select a method of payment if I need. I'll select method of payment as electronic payment, suppose. And the amount I'm not selecting. I want to settle some invoices, either one invoice or two invoices. Okay. For that, I'm going into settle transactions option here. You can see, right? Settle transactions. If you click here on settle transactions, you can see the pending invoices. So all these are payments actually, since you don't see invoice number. But when you scroll down, you can see invoices here. Invoice number 23, 24, 89. So for another one for 89 because payment schedule is applied on this invoice. So it got broken into two parts. And invoice number 48, 47 and 48 you have. Suppose I want to pay these two invoices, TINV 47 and 48. I can select both of them here. See, both of them are selected. How much amount? 1000 plus 1200. You can see here. Settlement amount 2200 that you are going to pay. That's what it indicates. If you select another invoice like this one as well, then you can see total of 12,209 combined amount of all the three. So in this way, you can mark the invoices that you want to settle. Or suppose I'll select only this one and you can click on OK. As soon as you click on OK, you can see vendor is being debited for 2200 against those two invoices that you are going to pay now. If you post this payment transaction, those two invoices will be settled and they will no more appear in the open invoices, or they will be no more available for settlement once again. So that's how. You can also see the marked transactions here actually. So these are the two invoices that you have marked. Invoice number 47 and 48. Due date is so and so. Invoiced on so and so date actually. Date of invoice and due dates and the amounts. So you can see that here actually view market transaction. So now you have settled them. If you want to unsettle any, if you don't want to use any of them, you can come back again, select that, unmark it before you post the journal. Okay, unmark it and go back again. So it is saying the total amount is different. So okay, you can click on yes, so that revalued amount will show up here. Only one invoice is selected, only 1200 is showing up here. Again, if you want, you can go back and select one or two invoices if for the payment. So select this one, click on OK. Click on OK. Done. For another invoice, if you want to make a separate payment, you can select new again. Select the same vendor, no problem. And you can again go for settle transactions. So that two are marked for this line. So for this payment line, you can select anything else, any other invoice. So you can see if those two are marked here, since you can see them as symbol here. Somebody is using them or marked them for those two. The other are available anyway. You can select another invoice, like I'll select this one, Tata INV 24, this one, and I can click on OK. So another 2000 payment line will be created, as you can see here, this one. SIP voucher number 10 and voucher number 11. Can again select some method of payment here, something like credit card, suppose, and I can select a bank account here, anything, any other bank account, my wish. So for electronic payment, I'll change the payment status to sent to post it. For this, it is none only. I'll leave it as none. So now I'm making two payments. In one of the payment, there are two invoices being settled, and in another payment, one invoice being settled. Okay, then I can post it. So this is how I can select the open invoice transactions of the vendor and settle them with some payments. One way of settling the vendor transactions. It is the same on the customer side as well. So clear for all of you this process. There is another way where you can also settle the invoices to the payments, which is important. I'll show you now. So it is when you have an invoice transaction posted separately and payment transaction posted separately. Means without settling this invoices, you can also directly post a payment transaction, right? We have done earlier. So if that kind of transaction was posted, there won't be any link to the invoice and payment at that situation. But later you can go to vendor transactions and settle both our invoice and payment. So let's see how we can do that. For that, I'll take you to vendors, all vendors. So you have to still discuss this vendor menu, which we will discuss tomorrow. But for today, we will only discuss about one important menu in the vendors transactions menu. Suppose if I select this vendor, Tata company, here I have this option called transactions, where I can see all the posted transactions for this vendor. And go into transactions. Here you can see there are a lot of transactions posted for this vendor. You can see an option here, show open only, means only the open transactions which are not yet settled. So these are the few transactions which are not yet settled. Remaining all are settled already. That is why they are disappearing. In the new version of Dynamics, you have an selection here, drop down menu. Actually, for all are open or closed, you can select in a drop down rather than this tick mark. Okay, remember that point. So these are the two invoices that are still open and not yet settled. Remaining are the payment transactions which we have made as an advance payment to the Tata company until now. And these are also not settled to any invoices yet. All of them are open. These invoices, you can see invoice balance in this side, and payments you can see this side. And you can also identify it by vouchers that they are vendor payments, and these are invoice journals, VIJ. And you can see the invoice numbers as well. So let me explain you this menu first. So you can see voucher number, the dates of invoices or payments whenever they are done, and the invoice numbers, description if any. You have a description for one of the payment here, like advance payment to Tata. You can see. Then you can see amount in transaction currency. Transaction currency in the sense whatever the currency that you use in the transaction. If you use a foreign currency, you can see the amounts in that foreign currency. But I think this is all US dollar only. So you can see the currencies in US dollar. Then the next menu that you see is balance in transaction currency. Balance means the amount that you have to pay to the vendor. So for all these things, you can see positive balances because these are already paid amounts or the advance payments that you have made. But however, when you see it for this invoice, you can see minus 2000 means you have to pay $2,000 to the vendor against this invoice or for this invoice. In the same way, when you look at this invoice, you see 20,009. $20,009 you have to pay to the vendor against this invoice. So that is why you can see this minus balances here. And this is amount in accounting currency and amount balance in accounting currency. Both are same since we don't have any foreign currency in the transaction currency. Both of them are same here. Amount in accounting currency and balance in accounting currency. Balance indicates how much balance is pending for the vendor, how much you have to pay to the vendor. Okay, so all of them showing status as invoiced. Actually, for payments, it's not invoiced, but however, it shows like that. So this is how this vendor transactions menu look like. So I'll just drag it side. This is posting profile that is used. Balance amounts, invoice, date, and payment. So if I remove this option, show open only, it will show all the transactions. So all the transactions in the sense, there are some settled transactions also. See this one, invoice number 47, 48, and 49, which were already settled. When you see amount, you can see your invoice amount was 1000, 1200 and 10,000. But you don't see any balance here. You cannot see any balance here because they were already paid. Once if they are paid, you don't see any more balance for those invoices. It will be zero. For the payment transaction which you used for payment of those invoices, for that also balance will be zero because both of them got settled, right? So zero will be the balance for them. How you can see which payment is done for which invoice? So for that you have this option. Select this invoice, go to the settlement option. Here you have the option called settlement history. Click on settlement history. You can see this vendor payment number 10, which is for settled, I mean against this invoice actually. The payment amount total is 2200. However, for this invoice, there is only 1000 balance, right? That 1000 balance is settled here. So that is actually the payment transaction that we have done today, 2200. Voila, this one, vendor payment 10. So this one is settled with that invoice. Or you can go to this payment transaction and see the settlement option as well. You can go to that, select that payment transaction, click on settlement history here. Here you can see the two invoices that are settled to that payment transaction. So you can see voucher number 6 and invoice journal number 6 and 7. You can see invoice number 47 and 48 are settled to that 2200 payment. So this is the two invoices, 1000 invoice and 1200 invoice. Both of them are settled. So since they are settled, for them you can see there is no more balance pending. Balance is zero here and balance is zero here for those invoices as well. But for open transactions, you can see there is some balance existing. It can be a full balance or it can be a partial balance. So now I have here some invoices as well as payments. I mean, these two are invoices. These are advance payments. Since there are advance payments already, I want to settle this invoice with one of the existing advance payment. Okay, let me do that. See, I have a 2000 invoice here and 1500 payment here. What I'll do is I will settle this 1500 payment to this 2000 invoice initially so that the pending amount on the invoice will be 500 to be paid later. So how to do that? Select the invoice first, this one, go to settlement. Here you have the option called settle transactions. Settlement. Click the settle transactions. So you can settle that invoice that you're going to settle, which is 2000 invoice, this one. And then payment transaction that you want to settle against this invoice. So the open payment transaction is 1500, this one. I'm selecting both of them. Okay, I can also select 500 transaction, but I'll select it later to show you. For now, I'm selecting only 2000 invoice and 1500 payment transaction. You can see payments are placed this side and the invoices are placed this side, and you can see the invoice number here and the due dates here and other amounts to settle also you can see here. Okay. So now I selected these two transactions, as you can see, invoice number and payment. So I'll post them. Click on post here. Let's see what happens. As soon as I click on post, I can still see this invoice in the open invoices because there is still a pending balance of 500. You can see earlier it was a pending balance of 2000. But now since you have settled 1500, you can see this 500 is showing up here. 1500 balance got decreased from this. So that payment transaction is settled with the invoice now. So that the remaining balance shows up. Where is that payment transaction? It got disappeared from here because it is no more an open transaction. It is now completely settled right with the invoice. So it will go into settled transactions or closed transactions. You can see it somewhere here. This should be the one. Yeah. You can see this balance is zero for this since it is settled completely with the invoice of 2000. So it won't, it will no more appear in the open transactions. Once the balance becomes zero, there is nothing to receive or pay on that transaction, right? So it shows zero. So it will not appear in the open transactions anymore. Now these are the open transactions. See, for this 2000 invoice, there is still a balance pending of 500. If there is a 1 rupee pending balance also or 1 cent pending balance also, it will show in the open transactions. But here it is 500 pending balance. So you can again settle this invoice with one of the payment transaction here. The remaining pending transaction like 500 is there, right? You can settle it. For that again, you can Go to the same invoice, select settle transactions again, and you can settle this same invoice. So for this invoice, it is now showing 500 because the pending amount is 500 only. Select the same invoice, select this advance payment transaction 500. This one 500 and 500. Now you can click on post. It is invoice number 23. There is some error. What is this? Amount account number for transaction type exchange rate does not exist. Reported from company accounts Reliance. Oh, I think we might have to configure those accounts. Give me a second. I'm going to general ledger. Accounts for automatic transactions. We have penny difference, but it is asking for exchange rate gain or exchange rate loss account. I can configure an account quickly. Click new. Exchange rate gain will be revenue, so I'll give it 400, 100. Exchange rate gain. Revenue. Oh, there is already 400, 100 account. I'm sorry. 400, 200. Let's go for. Okay, then 500, 200. Exchange rate loss. I'll select it as an expense account. Save it. Go back for the exchange rate gain account. I'll give that 400, 200 account. Show all. Here it is. For exchange rate loss, I'll give that 500, 200 account. Save it. So there could be some reason it is asking me for it. Let's see what it is. For some penny difference settlements because of this exchange rates, I think so. Now what I'll do is I'll again select this 200 invoice, go for settlement, click on settle transactions, select this 500 and 500 already marked there. Then I can select on post. So this time also I can see messages again. Account type. Okay, let's also configure this. There is another place where we have to give this as well. General ledger, ledger setup, ledger. Here I have these two accounts, realized gain and realized loss. Here also I'll give that account 400, 200 as realized gain account, 500, 200 as a realized exchange rate loss account. I'll save this as well here. Now let's see how it will not work. Refresh this menu. Select the invoice, go for settlement, go for settle transactions. Selected both the transactions, as you can see ticked. Then I can click on post. So this time they got settled actually. So because of those accounts missing in that place, it's asking. So now if you go to, if you see the 2000 invoice, whichever is pending with a balance of 500 is disappeared, as well as that payment transaction also disappeared. Both of them went into closed transactions. So if I remove this option, I can see all the transactions in which that 2000 invoice was here, data invoice 23, and I can see this one is posted now. Actually, this is the transaction that got posted with zero balances. Let me go to this voucher. This is the one which asked us for this account, exchange rate gain account. You can see there is a minute difference in the reporting currency, like 1 cent, because of which that automatic account was asked by the system, exchange rate gain account of 01, and accounts payable account is also settled with 0.01. Sometimes happens because of minute changes in the exchange rates or because of rounding offs. it will ask for this exchange rate gain or loss accounts. So I can see a cent difference, because of which I was unable to settle them earlier. But now I can settle it because it automatically picked this account and settled with the accounts payable account for this 1 cent in reporting currency. But in accounting currency, you don't see any differences, neither in the transaction currency. So that's how we can settle the open invoices with the payments. When you do not settle them during the payment, posting the payments, you can also settle it after posting them like this. Now I can see this invoice, which is for $20,009, and I can see the amount pending here. The balance pending here is 20,009 clearly. And there are certain invoice payment transactions which are existing here. These three transactions. Okay, I can settle all these three transactions to this. So these three, how much they are summing up? 4,800 totally. So I can settle that 4,800 against this invoice, and remaining will be left over. So let's see how we can settle it. Select the invoice, go to settlement, settle transactions. Here you can see only 4 transactions, because only four are there available. Actually, you can see 5 because this invoice is, I mean, we have applied a payment schedule to this invoice earlier. So that is why I can see it here as 2 parts, but whereas outside I can see it as one only. It is having 2 different due dates, as you can see. I can select for the first due date invoice, I mean the part of invoice, select all the 3 as well, the payment transactions. So 4,800 is being settled to the 10,000. The remaining balance is 5,200, as you can see. Okay, now I can click on post. So once I click on post, I can see this 20,009 is the amount and balance is 15,209. 4,800 is reduced from this amount because you have settled it, or payments are settled to this invoice now. The remaining balance to be paid on this invoice is this much only. Suppose if you feel like you have wrongly settled some of the payments to this invoice, you always have this option of undo settlement. You can again set them back. So for that, you can select this and go to settlement. Use this option undo settlement here. If you use undo settlement, you can see against that invoice there are you have settled these payments, 3 payments. So that is actually broken into 2 parts while representing the invoice. So I mean broken into 3 parts while representing the invoice. See, 1,000 payment, 1,300 payment, 2,500 payment. All the 3 are settled to the same invoice. As 2,500, 1,300, and 1,000. The pending amount on the invoice was settled in 3 pieces actually with these 3 transactions. Now you can settle all of them. If you want to undo settle only one payment transaction, you can select only one payment transaction. Suppose if you click on reverse here after selecting one payment transaction. So that is undo settle. You can see 1,000 is brought back again into the open transaction as a payment transaction. And now when you see the balance, it is showing 16,209. Earlier it was 15,209. Since you took off this payment transaction outside or undo settled it, then you can see the balance increased. In the same way, you can also undo settle the other transactions as well. Go to settlement, undo settlement, select the other 2 payments as well. So automatically the against invoice also will be selected if you select payment. So the 2 payments are selected now. I can click on reverse. See now the invoice is as it is. Balance is 2009 and the payment transactions are also showing as open as it is again. And the balance is also showing open as it is for those payment transactions also. So this is a important page where you can settle and undo settle the transactions. Whenever you have any discrepancies with the vendor invoices and payments, you can come to this transactions page and track the transactions of the vendor. And you can see the automated transactions for the vendor as well as the amounts pending for the vendor. You can see all of them. So clear guys, this process of settlement and undo settlement for all of you. Any confusion in this? Select this and you can also see settlement history again. It shows normally the history of what have been done until now. See, until now you have settled 3 payments and you reverse those 3 payments as well, so that you can see here clearly. 6 lines, because for the same invoice you have settled 3 payments earlier and undone the settlements once again. So you can see them reversing. Then if you go for this payment transaction, for suppose if you go to settlement and settlement history, you can see that invoice is settled earlier for 2500. Again, it was reversed. The settlement is reversed. So you can see 2 lines here. Settlement history showing up. So that's how you can settle transactions. You can also reverse the transaction from this menu by using this option, reverse transaction. Or you can also reverse an invoice from here. Only when vendor invoice journals can be reversed from here, but purchase order invoices cannot be reversed. And the payment transactions, I think whichever is involved with bank also cannot be reversed. Let me see the voucher for this from here. So it's accounts payable, bank actually. Should be a check payment as I see. It should be a check payment. Suppose if I click on reverse and reverse transaction, it says ledger transaction type bank for bank account cannot be reversed. So whenever any payment it is involved with bank, you cannot reverse it from here, from this situation. If you want to reverse a bank transaction, you have to go to cash and bank management. From there, you can reverse the check transaction if it is check. But for electronic payments, you cannot reverse from anywhere. You have to manually post a reversal transaction again in a vendor payment journal by crediting the vendor and debiting your bank account. No other way. But for check reversals, we have a mechanism, right? You can reverse it from the cash and bank management. Automatically, that reversal transaction also will appear here. To show you, there should be the cancel check transaction here. So this one, cancel payment. When you cancel or reverse a check from a cash and bank management, since this vendor is also involved, right? So you can also see that transaction appearing here in the vendor transactions once you reverse it. As you see here, vendor payment and check reversal. Check reversal transaction, since it's linking vendor, it will also appear in the vendor transactions. So wherever you post any transaction in any module, if it is linking the vendor, you can see it in the vendor transactions list. The same way, whenever it is involving the bank account, you can see it in the bank transactions list. That's how. Now I can go back again to open transactions. So you can see this option paid by checks. In case if any invoice is paid by check amount, I'll see any of the paid invoices. So let me select this invoice number 23, paid by checks. I don't have any payment by check for this as well. Any other invoice? This one, paid by checks. No. So which one we paid earlier? I don't think this is also paid by checks. No. Sorry. Let's go for this advance payment paid by checks. I think here also I can't see it. Oh, I thought we have involved in check here in this method. It's not showing actually. Invoices paid by check. Normally this in vendor payment number 1, settlement history, settled to invoice number 89 and reversed, right? Okay. Suppose if I go here, I'll settle this again with settle transactions. I'll settle this invoice of 10,000 with this 1,000 payment. Okay, and I'll post it. Now I can go to this one, click on paid by checks, even though it's not showing. I mean, I can click here on checks. No. Then you can see a original document from here actually for the invoice. Use this option, select the invoice, click on original document. It will show you the invoice number as well as the journal in which you have posted it. If you select this one, it will take you to the invoice view details. It will take you to the inquiry option area where you can see the invoice journal. this one, invoice journal page, or you can go back and select this journal so that it will take you to that particular vendor invoice journal batch where you have posted it. See here, you are directly taken to vendor invoice recording. This is the journal batch in which you have posted that invoice. You can go to lines and check for that invoice. So this is the invoice number 89 for 20,009, which you have posted here in the vendor invoice journal. So automatically it will take you to that original document. If you are using any purchase order invoice, it will show you both purchase order number and invoice number here in the original document. Okay. Other than this, you have this open details option. It shows this open details. So you have to pay two installments for this invoice, out of which one installment is for 10,000, on which you have already paid 1,000, right? So it is showing 9,000 actually. So it is showing two due dates for the same invoice, 9,000 to be paid, 10,000 and 9 to be paid. And if any cash discounts taken or discount date, you can see the details here. Then reversal, we have seen it already. 1099 is specifically for US. So other than this, we have cash flow forecast and other inquiries. Inquiry transactions. Normally you have the same, the transactions also. So this is how we can settle and undo settle the transactions. So tomorrow we'll discuss about the vendor menu, different options available in the vendor menu, what all we can give as a default to the vendor. And if time permits, we'll also discuss about the other concepts of procurement actually. Vendor. So P2P posting dates, this one is completed. So this has to be discussed, whichever is in the bracket. This is completed. And invoice journals and vendor payments are completed. Other than this, we can discuss on this part, purchase orders and other steps involved. For that, again, we might have to create something else like products we need to have and inventory setups has to be done. So that we will discuss tomorrow, how we can create some products. So this should be the things that we have. All of them fall into supply chain actually, this inventory management and product information management, but somehow we'll discuss them tomorrow if time permits. And after completing this only, we can work on purchase orders and sales orders part. So that would be all for today.